I was going to go into this whole like retaliation, but I do have receipts and I have the clip as well.
GeorgeJanko recently had Bobby Lee on his podcast, and the first thing that was addressed out the gate was Bobby Lee officially, quote unquote, apologizing to George. Now, if you don't know why Bobby Lee was even apologizing to George and what brought this up, well, if you don't know, George was on Impulsive's podcast with Logan Paul and Mike, and they had Bobby Lee on the podcast. And while he was on the podcast, Bobby Lee was inappropriately grabbing and trying to grope GeorgeJanko while the podcast was going on, as well as he had GeorgeJanko smell his own private area. Now, there were other things that happened in this podcast, but it ultimately ended up with George doing this.
He is clocked out.
Yeah,
Oh,
I know.
George has been under a tremendous amount of abuse.
No.
No, stop, George. I want you over here with me. George, I want you over here. Chase him down. Go. You find him. George, no, go get him. Go get him. I said this, he walked, and that's a first. And now we're going to have to deal with the fallout of this episode for the next 2 months. I swear to God, Bobby Lee, you pissed off my co-host. He's probably crying in the driveway.
You know, the Beatles could have lost Ringo.
Oh, yeah. Oh, man. Shout out to the Myman.
Okay.
Yeah, but we just took.
I mean, if Ringo left, they would be like, oh, let's shoot fucking Abbey Road, record Abbey Road.
We just shot a new profile picture.
Yeah, I know. I'm saying is that
we need him.
That attitude right there was just unprofessional.
It was a bit unprofessional.
It was unprofessional.
Yeah, it was.
Listen, I'm a guest, right? I feel hurt and abandoned.
I know.
I feel rejected.
Me too.
And this was fucked up.
So as we can see, George stormed off. He had enough of Bobby Lee and his co-host there as well, and was frustrated and was done. And George took a lot of heat for this. People made fun of George. They said he was too soft, that he didn't have enough thick skin, that he doesn't know who Bobby Lee is, and that Bobby Lee was just joking with him. But guys, when we have to understand and kind of peel back what was really going on, GeorgeJanko was being sexually assaulted by Bobby Lee. And that's the key issue here. And so when George has Bobby Lee on his podcast and Bobby addresses this, the apology almost seems not real, not genuine. And it's hard to kind of make that claim. But guys, listen in for yourself on Bobby Lee's quote unquote apology.
I want to open up by saying that I'm sorry. I feel I just want to break down what happened with the Jake Paul podcast.
Got it.
Okay. So I usually do podcasts in my ecosystem, right? So it's like I know the rhythms and I know what I can and can't say, and generally, everything is people are pretty open to. They know who I am, right? But with you guys, I didn't know, so and also it's a huge platform, so I was like super nervous. So I tend to get bullyish and out of survival. Okay.
So as we can see here, Bobby Lee's making an excuse for his actions. He's not necessarily owning up to them. He does say that he's sorry, but he's making an excuse saying, I was just nervous. I was on a big podcast. I didn't know you guys. I'm normally in my own ecosystem, so I know what to say and do, what's okay, what's not okay. He's just making up an excuse on why he then reacts in a bullish way towards individuals when in an environment like that, which caused him to bully GeorgeJanko. He then goes on and talks about how he really doesn't remember doing the things that George said he did to him.
So number one, I do so many podcasts, I don't even remember what I said or did or didn't do. I remember moments. And also secondly, when you walked off the set, I literally was confused by it. I did, but with all that being said, I really truly apologize. I love people. I love podcasting, And I think that you're a voice that people talk about now, and you know what I mean, you're here, and I just apologize. It's like
Thank you, bro.
I'm sorry.
All joking aside,
Seriously.
for real, I really appreciate that.
Bobby Lee is saying, listen, I didn't know I did that. If I did that, sorry. Again, not sure if I did that or not. Guys, this is not a genuine apology. Bobby Lee knows what he did. Bobby Lee is not a fool. He may play a fool, he may act a fool at times, but you know when you've been grabbing somebody inappropriately on purpose countless times during a podcast, and you definitely know when you have somebody smell and sniff your private area on the podcast as well. You don't just forget these things. So for Bobby Lee not to own up to what he did shows me that this is not a genuine apology. Shows me that this is just him trying to kind of save face. Because people did start to see the issues that Bobby Lee was doing to George on that podcast. And George even kind of calls him out and says, well, here, bro, here are the receipts.
Actually, you know, it's so funny.
And I asked my assistant to look it up, and she's like, I didn't see that. You know what I mean? And I was just like, oh.
Here. I was going to go into this whole like retaliation, but I do have receipts and I have the clip as well.
Okay, let's see.
Yeah. Oh, no. I have receipts. I just didn't want to do that. Wasn't my whole like.
Let's move on from that. You know, if I did, I did. I'm sorry.
No,
because
because
do it to make
are
people
questioning
uncomfortable
it.
and make it be fun.
So even at the end of this, when George says, listen, I got the receipts, here's the video right here, he shows Bobby Lee. Bobby Lee is like, okay, let's just forget about that. You know, if I did it, I did it. Bobby Lee, you did it. Apologize. Genuinely apologize. Own up and say, George, listen, I grabbed you inappropriately. I made you smell my privates. I bullied you completely on that podcast. I made fun of you. I got your name wrong on purpose. All of those things I did, and that was wrong of me. And I am truly sorry. But we don't see that apology from Bobby Lee. He's just downplaying it. And so watching this podcast through and through, it was awkward. It really just didn't fit, these two coming together and doing a podcast like this. But at the end of the day, obviously, I don't know a man's heart. I don't know if he was being super genuine or not. But guys, on the surface, this doesn't look genuine. And so hopefully they have truly kind of made up and moved on from this. But this podcast was awkward. And the situation around it is even more awkward. And so with that being said, I don't know, man. Like some things just don't need to happen. And this podcast, in my opinion, just didn't need to happen. This apology could have been done behind closed doors. So we'll see what everyone else's thoughts are with the situation. And if I'm the only one who thinks this apology was just kind of fake and surface level, or if other people are agreeing with that kind of viewpoint. Well, cool, guys, if you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing to the BTteam Ministry YouTube channel, as well as drop a like and let me know your thoughts down below. Leave a comment. I would love to engage and have some conversations with you. If you enjoyed this video, you might like this one over here.